Hi friends! Welcome to the community kitchen at the McQuesten Urban Farm. I've been trying for weeks to make a Zesto Pesto recipe because many people have asked. I've tried this at home with my little one filming and helping, which is very helpful. So here we are 2 weeks later, but as promised, we want to show you how to make a basil pesto. We'll be doing other pestos in the future, and this is our basic recipe that you can use with a lot of different greens. And we're doing basil pesto today, but this is a nut-free and dairy-free version because at the farm we have a lot of food allergies and sensitivities and restrictions. And also, to complement the hard work of growing all the basil, we wouldn't be able to offset our costs if we were going out to buy more expensive ingredients like pine nuts. And often we'll have Parmesan Reggiano on the side, so if we're making a dinner with this basil pesto, then it's still an option to add to the dish. So this is the recipe. I've taken a picture of it. It's sort of basic, and definitely experiment with this. So I tend to do things by ratio because we never really know how much we'll have of something maybe left over at market, or if we need to get things out of the field, then we might have bulk amounts. So this is a recipe that's based on ratios. And what you will need for this recipe is a food processor of sorts, or maybe you're going to use the old-fashioned mortar and pestle, like the Nona way. Definitely some clean utensils, bowls. A spatula comes in handy at the end of this process. Dish soap because it gets really oily and therefore greasy. And then what we're using to make the pesto is basil, a really good quality olive oil, the best you can afford. We like to get this olive oil because we know it's a pure 100% olive oil, and it's also organic. We're using our fresh garlic that we pulled out of the fields, and it's been around for a couple weeks now. So very potent, very fresh garlic, and some salt, and some lemon juice. So we use organic lemon juice here, and use fresh lemons if you can. Fresh is best. So if you didn't have a food processor, with some of the pestos that we make, you can also just use a cutting board and a knife. The result might be different though, because especially with a lot of the basils and a lot of knife chopping, it can bruise easily. So some considerations before you start is if you were to add maybe pine nuts or walnuts to this, and with the garlic, you want to get that coarse before you mix your basil, because if you do it all at once, you're going to overmix your basil and then risk bruising it. So take the coarser things that you're using in the pesto and blend those first, or crush or turn them into a paste first. So that's what I've done already with the garlic, and I'll show you how we like to destem the garlic. A pretty simple way is, I've taken this off the clove, and then I'm gonna cut the end where the root hairs are. Just slice that off, try not to waste a lot, and then I flip my knife over and I give it a smash. I just crush it down, so my hand's away from the blade. And that crushing really releases all the goodness of the garlic, and it comes out of its skin really easily. And then, it's already sort of pulverized and crushed, so it would be ready for the food processor and the basil, or you can give it a couple rough chops if you want, or even go back with your knife and push down a few more times just to smear it and sort of turn it into a paste on the cutting board. And then you're just gonna risk, then you'll just have a nice consistency. You're not gonna risk anything. And I'll show you the basil. The basil here, we've been making a lot of pesto because the basil is starting to flower. So there's a nice little flower. The bees love that, and then it will go to seed. But when your basil's growing in your backyard or here at the farm, we will take these flowers off to keep encouraging the leaf growth, because the more the basil starts to flower, the energy works towards creating the flower and the seed, and then the leaves get more tough and more bitter over time. And it's not really ideal to make a pesto at that point. So use your leaves when they're nice and green. In the end of the summer, with all the heat, moisture, and humidity, check the underside of your leaves, because we just noticed for the first time, a little upsetting, but there's like the basil downy mildew that happens. Thankfully, that is not a pathogen that can harm us. It's not poisonous, but still, when you see that happening, maybe even with your own plants, remove all the affected leaves so that it doesn't spread, because that is a spore and it's airborne and sort of difficult to control, but do look out for that and remove those leaves. So when you're making the basil pesto, I do destem this. With some other green sauces and pestos that we make, like chimichurri, I'll use the stem, but the stem on the basil is a little tougher. So we'll just use the leaves. And generally, to make a nice pesto, I'll use 3 to 4 cups of basil. And this is loosely packed, so it's been washed. One little tip about basil is it doesn't like to go in the fridge. So you're gonna wanna wash it in cool water to like hydro cool it and get, any germs off, but then remove that extra moisture and keep it out of the fridge. So you might want to keep it in a little vase with a small amount of water. No water touching the leaves, but just the stems, and that will keep your basil fresher longer. And yeah, basil doesn't really like to go in the freezer so much. When you de-thaw it, it becomes a little bit slimy. And before you begin, if your basil is still wet, then pat it dry with a paper towel or a tea towel, because obviously water and oil don't mix. And then this will keep your basil pesto fresher longer. So get rid of all the extra moisture. And then you're sort of ready to go. You've got crushed garlic and nice dry clean basil leaves. And the ratio I use, that I like to use, I go a little bit heavy on the greens. So 4 cups of basil to 1 cup of olive oil. And then this is loosely packed, but if that seems intense, you can even do like 3 cups. So the general recipe, I'll just show you quickly, is, I hope you can see this and it's the right way, 3 to 4 cups of loosely packed basil, 1 cup of pure olive oil, garlic to taste, but 1 tablespoon will definitely give you a nice mellow garlic flavor, and then you can try 2 if you really like garlic. And the same thing with salt. I find half a teaspoon, which is a couple pinches, to be enough in this recipe, but if you like things on the salty side, then do a full teaspoon. And then last but not least, I call this Zesto Pesto because I'm obsessed with lemon juice and lime juice. So I'm using a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, which might seem like a lot, but you can do less of that. And I just love it because I think it really brings out the brightness, especially if we're not using like the other fats of nut and cheese. So yeah, we'll make it and then I'll teach you how to store it, but that's pretty simple too. I'll just teach you now. When you store this, this will last for about 2 weeks in your fridge, or we freeze it. And then that frozen pesto can sit for 6 months upon making it. And you want to consume it once it's de-thawed. You want to consume it within 2 weeks. And also, the basil doesn't lie. It might be before 2 weeks. If you notice like a browning that's coming into your pesto container, then you might just want to discard it because the air will really affect the basil and it will start to go brown. So you'll see that. A starting point with your food processor is to make sure that the base is locked into place and that the blade is in first. Otherwise, you just have to like dump all your ingredients out and start again. I had a co-op student, Bella, who's really, really good with this food processor because usually they won't work unless they're locked properly. She's really good at that. So let's see how much garlic we have. I'm gonna put the garlic in the bottom first because it is that more coarse. And I think we're gonna end up with 1.5 tablespoons of garlic. And then we've got our basil. I do this so often that I almost think of 1 heaping handful as a cup. So I often, when I do this at home, I hardly measure. Sometimes it falls out. It's gonna look really packed, so I'll just stop there for now. And a cup of olive oil. Lemon juice. Whoa, shaky hands. And I'm gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, or even a heaping one, sure. don't really think you can go wrong with this recipe. Okay, I'm gonna put the lid on. Then I always warn people around me, like the sensitive people around me, like my daughter, like, oh, I'm gonna turn it on. So I'm gonna turn it on. 3, 2, 1. You can see how quickly that incorporated. And with the basil, I don't want to over process it because then I'm just going to be bruising and damaging the leaves. So I don't always get this into a proper pure paste. And I'm going to go in once and scrape the sides. Thankfully with this, if the lid is off, it won't turn on, so I can do that safely. Just going to scrape the sides. This is another time where you could check for taste to see if you like how things are tasting. But usually pestos mellow, so they'll taste better the next day or the day after, or even after a few months in your freezer. So, here goes. Still some leaf pieces, but if you were using something like a Vitamix, it would probably become fuller incorporated or more incorporated faster. But again, I don't want to bruise the leaves. And I don't really want to emulsify the olive oil with too much air. Then the olive oil sort of becomes like a thicker salad dressing. So I'll show this to you. And a lot of people ask, oh, what do you do with this? And I think most commonly you put a basil pesto onto pasta. But we have a lot of success feeding babies basil pesto. My nine-month-old, when she was 9 months, loved this so much. And I was like, oh, great, you're eating like a pretty strong tasting green as a little kid. And then I said that to a mom last week, and I gave her a container to take away from the market and sent a very cute photo of her 1-year-old enjoying the basil pesto on pasta. But you can also put it onto like a flatbread or a garlic bread that you're gonna bake, or on pizza dough instead of the traditional like marinara sauce. Basil pesto goes really well on that. And feel free to share your ideas. Some people just drizzle it on everything because they love it so much, like eggs or an omelet. So please feel free to share what you do with your basil pesto. Some of this could even just be added with more olive oil and vinegar to make a salad dressing. And basils love tomato, so I'll show you the product. And I'm gonna stir that around and just make sure that you're gonna put it into an airtight container and try to fill it up all the way so that there isn't room for air to be touching the basil, because then you will notice, especially if you're keeping it in the fridge at first, that there will be browning. I think that the lemon juice also helps keeping the basil green and not brown. So I'm just gonna fill this up. And I made this today with 4 bunches of our basil that we have at the market. Oh, it's beautiful, just beautiful. Come see. Just beautiful. It's our first time using the selfie stick. Hi. So thanks everyone for coming to market today. I'm filming this after market, and with the 4 bunches of leftover basil that we had. And look, we made a perfect little 8-ounce container of basil pesto. And then I'll label that. And if you don't have this equipment at home, but you do want some basil pesto, let us know, because we have a lot of this in our freezers, because we had awesome volunteers help us process a lot last week. And we have over 75 containers just to capture the freshness of that beautiful basil that we grew. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let us know. Take care. Bye.